Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah ma ba'd. What is the ruling on swallowing your own saliva during the fast? It might sound like a bit of an odd question, but what the question is asking is that a person gathers enough saliva in their mouth and then swallows it, and this would act as a quench to thirst if they are feeling thirsty. Is this permissible? Does that break the fast or not? Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, كُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. Eat and drink until the time for Fajr enters. When it becomes clear to you that Fajr has entered, then abstain from food and drink until the sun has set. Therefore, what has been made prohibited is food and drink and not saliva. And this is the view of the majority of them. They have said that it is makruh for a person to do this, but it doesn't invalidate the fast. Makruh, obviously, because it is disliked, the person is playing around, it is not natural, etc. Except that the Hanafi ulama have said, if the person gathers enough saliva and it becomes like a sip of water in his mouth or her mouth, then qiyas with this and intentionally vomiting is closer. We know from the hadith of Abu Dawud, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said that if a person vomits on purpose, فَلْيَقْضِي, then that person needs to make qada for that day. So now, if the Messenger of Allah ﷺ is saying that if a person is intentionally vomiting, then intentionally gathering up your saliva becomes haram also. And this is the analogy that they bring. But it doesn't necessarily break your fast. With the Hanafis, it only breaks your fast when it leaves your mouth and then you swallow it again. Then they say the qiyas with this now, the analogy with this now, is closer to food and drink. You can see the process of fiqh here, can't you? We've got a hadith and we've got ayah. Gathering saliva in your mouth, there's no hadith and there's no ayah. So now the Hanafi ulama have made qiyas. With vomit, if you're gathering it in your mouth and then swallowing it, they said that this is haram, but we don't have enough evidence to say that this would invalidate your fast. However, if that gathering leaves the mouth and then you just slurp it back in somehow, then this is closer to a person putting something which is foreign to his body, food and drink, and then swallowing it and eating it. This would invalidate the fast with the Hanafis. The Shafi'is and the Hanbalis, may Allah have mercy on them all, have said no. If you have gathered a large amount and it stays in your mouth, then it is makruh and it doesn't break the fast. But if it goes beyond the natural place, right, so I don't know, not necessarily even outside of your mouth, but beyond the natural place, to the tip of your lips or something like that, then this could potentially break your fast if you're doing it on purpose. This is now the ruling on swallowing your own saliva. What seems to be the correct view is that it is not food and drink, and it is makruh for a person to do this. But some of the ulama have said that it is haram for a person to do this, and if it leaves their mouth and then they swallow it, then this would invalidate the fast. And this is the view, like I've said, of many of the ulama, including the Hanafis and the Shafi'i and Ahmed have said something similar. So a person should be very careful in the way that they're doing this, if they are doing this, and they should avoid it completely, not playing around in this manner whilst they're fasting. And obviously there could be even some harm, physical harm involved. I'm not sure if there is, but I'm sure there probably would be. And if there is, then la darun wa la dirar, the Messenger of Allah said there should be no harm or causing of harm to yourself, to others, to your body, etc. Right. One last mas'ala when it comes to saliva. Are you allowed to swallow the saliva of your partner? This might be a bit strange, but there is a hadith in Abu Dawud that the Messenger of Allah used to kiss Aisha radiallahu anha, and he even used to suck her tongue out of affection, similar in the way of kissing that people have in certain cultures. And he used to suck her tongue. Now, what we learn from this is his affection that he used to have during the fasting. He wasn't somebody who was mean, unapproachable. He was compassion. He showed compassion. He was compassionate. He was merciful. Probably even more so whilst he was fasting, as we learn from the hadith of Ibn Abbas. But also we learn from this the fiqh. The saliva of your partner is makruh with the majority. Makruh to the extent that if you have taken, like we have just given the principles previously, if you have taken into your mouth a large amount, enough for it to be counted as, something which is foreign entering into your body, then this would invalidate the fast. What about the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sucking the tongue of Aisha? They have said there are two possible explanations. Number one, they have rejected the authenticity of this hadith. They said it's weak. And if it is sahih, then he only sucked the tongue and he didn't have that much saliva from her mouth. And then that would, inshallah, keep the validity of the fast. Therefore, applying the same principle that we just mentioned to your own saliva, if it leaves and you swallow it back and it's a large amount, that would invalidate your fast with the majority. They are saying that the same applies to your partner. And this is based on the ayah that we quoted in the beginning, because this is similar to eat and drink, something foreign, an object coming into your body and you then swallowing it. That would then nullify the fast with the majority of the ulama. One last question. This happens to us all, I'm sure. Are we allowed to swallow some of the water that remains in our mouth after performing wudu and ghusl? Then the answer to that question is that if it is, like we have just said, the principle, if it is a small amount, yes, they may be foreign, but this is something that you can't avoid. You spit out what you have got in your mouth from wudu and ghusl. But whatever remains, فَهُوَ عَفُوٌ, as the ulama say, then this is overlooked and it is pardoned. If it's a small amount, you've tried your best to remove everything. If anything then remains is the moisture, then that does not invalidate the fast. Walillahi alhamd. However, same principle applies. If it is considered as enough as a sip and you are able to extract it and you didn't extract it and you swallowed it on purpose intentionally, then that would invalidate the fast. How about if a person had a little bit of water left over, or perhaps even food left over after suhoor, and they swallowed it and they were able to remove it, then it's the same thing. This would invalidate the fast. But if they swallow it's a small amount, and they swallowed it unintentionally, wudu, unintentionally, ghusl, unintentionally, your own saliva, unintentionally, saliva of your partner, unintentionally, as in it's a small amount and you didn't want to swallow it, but it's, then inshallah, all of this is not a nullifier of the fast. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He teaches us of His religion and that He allows us to implement. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu